For the first time since former President Olusegun Obasanjo launched his tirade against President Buhari, he got a public response from the president.
And Obasanjo had drawn the first blood when he earlier this year, in January, launched a broadside at the president over perceptions of clannishness, incompetence, among other failures or alleged or perceived failures in the management of the country. Now, the former president spearheaded a movement to stop a second term for President Buhari, calling on Nigerians to vote out Buhari in 2019.
Well, President Buhari is hitting back. On Wednesday, the president raised questions as to the availability of power in the country after huge resources were spent on the sector by the Obasanjo-led administration. Obasanjo has never failed to state that he spent a whopping $16 billion, but that has been debunked, and in fact never really gave that figure anyway. It was just alleged. More facts are emerging from that anyway.
Yes, and well.
And one of the former heads of state between that time was bragging that he spent more than 15 billion American dollars, not naira, on power. Where is the power? Where is the power? And now we have to pay the debt. And this year's and last year's budget I took to the National Assembly was the highest in capital projects, more than 1.3 trillion naira. Let anybody come and confront me publicly in the National Assembly. What have they been doing? Some of them have been there for 10 years. What have they been doing?
And with us in the studio is a social commentator, Buhari Shoumi, to look into this for us. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
The claim by the president already has been tagged as unsubstantiated because former President Olusegun Obasanjo said he never spent $16 billion on power generation or any activity relating to power in the country. So fact-checking that first of, The Nation on the front page says how $8.5 billion was released for power projects in 13 years. Coming at this time, would you say the president goofed terribly on the figures first off?
Well, one has to pardon him, even if those figures were wrong, because the $16 billion was widely held by the public, by so many people. It's not only in the news, it was in the news. It was a subject of probe by the House of Representatives and under Aminu Tambuwal, if I'm correct. And so many people actually thought that figure existed, but in reality, it did not. So if the president picked up on that figure, so we all know where that is coming from. The fact of the matter is an humongous amount of money was spent on power projects under Obasanjo. And like Obasanjo is also correct to have pointed to what he did with the money. If you go through some of the projects, Lanto, Olonshogo power plant, then you have Omotosho, and these plants cost a huge amount of money in addition to transmission. I think what the president was actually focusing on the output, that is the outcome. Look, you spent whatever figure.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, what we've not seen the outcome of that. Whereas Obasanjo's viewpoint on it is that, look, we spend that money to create, the process that will lead to the outcome. That is, have the infrastructures in place so that you can, at the end of the day, be able to get the power.
Yeah, but some people are, looking at this, saying this just amounts to this tendency to continue to look back instead of looking forward. 3 years of this administration, you're still complaining about what the last administration did wrong or did not even do at all, beyond the Jonathan administration and, of course, way back to the Obasanjo administration. But really, is this really just about how much was spent on power, how much was not spent on it? Or is it election mode now? And people are asking, can Buhari survive being in the boxing ring with an Obasanjo? Who will come up really bruised out of all of this at the end of the day?
Yeah, Baba is an old fox.
And both of them old foxes?
Yeah, both
horses.
of them. They're both generals. They're both generals who have served this country meritoriously, very courageous, very brave. The fact of the matter is Buhari did not ask for this fight. This fight was brought to Buhari by former President Obasanjo, in the sense that President Obasanjo launched the first attack, asking Buhari not to contest election, and then he went further to criticize some
Was
of
that
his...
an attack really urging someone not to contest? He has the right to speak, just
Like
an
every other
advice, like a Nigerian?
Obviously, he expressed his opinion. Not only that, he went further to say that, look, I will organize against your government. I will make sure that you do not contest the next election, and if you do, you will be defeated. You know, and for Buhari, that's an open declaration of war. Both of them are generals. They understand what they're talking about.
Well, it took him quite a while to respond to this jab.
It did. I would have thought the presidency should have maintained the silence and just continue to do what they're doing. But responding to Obasanjo, that's what Obasanjo wants, you know, because he's now able to fire back and then say more things and all that. At the end of the day, Buhari is the one in the hot seat, not Obasanjo currently. So that is the problem with that. But the fact of the matter is, Buhari must have been irritated, you know, at Obasanjo joining the queue of those who are against his administration. He has his problems with the National Assembly. That is still there. And then you still have all the rumblings going on within the APC over primaries or no primaries position in preparation for the election. So now for an Obasanjo to come and join that queue for Buhari,
So the president was just trying to fire back at
precisely.
reason he praised the late head of state, Sani Abacha, as well, somehow to throw a jab at former military president Babangida as well.
It has always been, the president has held that view about Abacha's regime for a long time. He had expressed it. This is not the first time. I don't agree with it. I think his views run counter to what the public believes, and it runs counter to all the evidence we have, including repatriation of funds from Switzerland and US, you know, to his government, which are quite pointer to the fact that that regime was corrupt. But for some reason, Buhari served in that regime, heading the PTF, and maybe out of loyalty, he felt compelled to defend Abacha. But I felt that must have been an error. He shouldn't have.
And it's not just Olusegun Obasanjo that got this below the belt, if you like, from President Buhari. The National Assembly too, he said, look, many of them have been there for 10 years. What have they done? How much value really have they added to not just democracy, but maybe governance?
What are they supposed to do?
Yes.
They are legislators. They are legislators. Their job is to legislate and to carry out oversight functions. In fact, I would have loved the president to, you know, actually I liked the fact that they were dabbling into executive functions through the constituency projects. I would have expected the president to at least attack them from that viewpoint, but not from the point of view of what do you expect legislators to do, is to look at laws and carry out oversight functions. That's their primary.
So in essence, would you now blame Nigerians really asking President Buhari what he's done so far? You know, there was a challenge online at one point from some group of people asking Nigerians to mention any project started by this administration and finished. Till now, nobody has come up to say anything.
But that is also a very unfair question. Government is continuum. We do not expect Buhari to abandon all what had been done in the past and then insisted on starting new projects. Look, we have abandoned projects in this country are over 17 trillion worth of naira worth of abandoned projects. These are sheer waste of public funds. So why can't people continue from there? So if Buhari is not coming out with new initiative, you know, on projects and is trying to complete the existing ones, I think that's better value for the public.
I doubt if anybody would have any reservations about that.
Yes.
That same exact reason is why people are saying, can we just begin to look forward instead of looking back and criticizing past governments? Because he said also that his own administration is now bearing the brunt and having to carry the burden of the failures of past administrations, which is still part of the reason why you say that government is a continuum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, continue from where the former administrations stopped.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just that APC has not evolved, in terms of its information dissemination mechanism.
Yeah.
It has not evolved from the first year, to the third year, the election mode. Initially, you can blame other people, past governments, for things that have gone wrong. But you can no longer use that as a defense. By now, they should be telling Nigerians exactly what this government has achieved. And they've achieved quite some things. So that is what they should be talking about rather than focusing.
Well, the information minister seems to be doing a good job
Yeah.
of that. I mean, he's been coming out with a list of projects that this administration has succeeded in putting to bed. And in addition to that, he has said 2019 is going to be a walk in the park. Will it really be a walk in the park for this administration?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be tough, but they can do better by coming out more with what they've done. That is what Nigerians want to see. They want to assess the regime based on its own achievements. Yes, there will be problems there. There are challenges, arising from the past and all that. But dwelling on that now, around election period, after 3 years in office, will not help the regime.
So you're saying a probe into this allegation won't be in order because of that?
No, there's no way they will probe into the allegation to start with, on this, the alleged $16 billion power problem.
Yeah.
There's no way this regime will not dwell into it a year to the end of his administration. That people will think, look, what do you think you are doing? It's a distraction which they don't need. On the other hand, Obasanjo would love the government to delve into that because it will give them another platform.
Of the administration if they don't probe it since the president announced it. They criticized the previous administration, and then you have the toga of anti-corruption.
Yes, the president didn't allege that $16 billion was stolen. He simply said, where was the power? That is, look, you spend so much money, we didn't see the outcome. Yeah. That does not mean that the money was stolen, or he never made such an allegation. So he was only hinging on the outcome. We have not seen the outcome. Whereas the money was sent on processes, that is, putting together the infrastructure, necessary to deliver the outcomes. I think those are the two issues which we've managed to harmonize in the past, because there had been probes in the past, not only the House of Reps, the EFCC had looked into this issue and found that no $16 billion, was missing.
Is OBJ an enemy of this administration or a friend? When you recall, after that letter, the issue of Babachir Lawal, the former secretary to the government of the Federation, was more or less tackled immediately. Yes. Where he was finally, something was finally done about, about him. And then other things that have
yet to be
yet to be concluded. Yes, we know that, but he's continued his politics in Adamawa also. Is OBJ, Olusegun Obasanjo, an enemy of this administration, or is this all about Nigeria? Is Nigeria at the core of his interventions, including that of IBB and, of course, T.Y. Danjuma?
Oh, yes. There have been so many developments in the country that normally many people will be so concerned. We have the herdsmen problem is still there. We have the Southern Kaduna problem is there. We have the Shiite problem is there. Many Nigerians will be concerned about the security situation. Despite that, this government has done very, very well, in terms of dealing with the Boko Haram insurgency. So no one wants other eruptions elsewhere. But when it comes to the issue of what is going on currently, the current controversy is political in nature, given the fact that 2019 is coming. Politicians have a way of jostling for power. Obasanjo has jumped into the fray. He's not necessarily an enemy of this administration. He has a different viewpoint, and Obasanjo, as he is, has his own ways of doing things. He's always wanting to be the power behind the throne, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's quite very influential. He's been a former president, former head of state in the country. Very influential man. So he would always want to have his hand, in the pie. So this is always the problem. You have the Buhari there, who is the sitting president, who, as far as he is concerned, felt he should be given the room to do what he has to do. And in any case, he was not expecting Obasanjo to jump in and start criticizing him heavily, because Obasanjo was one of those people who supported him
massive
and
support.
brought him into power. But we should not forget one thing, Buhari too was doing that when he was in opposition.
But wouldn't it have been hypocritical of Obasanjo if, after supporting someone to get into power, and to him, the person isn't, living across border or performing effectively, as one of the supporters, didn't he have the right to, at least criticize? Say that
No,
this is
nobody
where,
can take
take
that away from him. Look, Obasanjo is not even someone you can silence anyway. If he's not speaking, he will be writing letters. So he's not someone anybody can silence. He's a man very eloquent who can express himself on any issue at any point in time. And he's never afraid of doing that. And he will never shy away from any conflict. That is Obasanjo.
But the frequent response you continue to get from this administration when such criticisms arise, whether it's from Olusegun Obasanjo or whoever else, you hear that the critics of this government are enemies of the administration and enemies of Nigeria, as a matter of fact.
Well, but
so how do you draw the line between, criticizing or constructive criticism? Is that what is coming from this gentlemen like Olusegun Obasanjo? How constructive are some of their critics?
Look, it's quite clear that we tend to have, politically, less room for criticisms. We don't just simply tolerate it. We would rather have people eulogizing us, praising us and all that, rather than being told the plain truth. That does not mean that in between that, you don't have people who are maneuvering politically. You have that. And Obasanjo could as well be one of those people doing that. The fact of the matter is there must be a robust discussion on national issues, including government achievements and drawbacks. We should never shy away from that. But to label people as enemy of Nigeria simply because they are criticizing government policies, to me, is wrong. They are not necessarily enemy. You can't have all of us, thinking in the same direction. People must have a different perspective, to those who are in power, because that is the only way society can develop. It's based on negative and positive, clashing somewhere. You can't remove that friction. We all cannot continue to think the same way. We all cannot be members of APC. We all cannot be members of PDP. So at the end of the day, we need to allow room for constructive criticisms rather than labeling or trying to suppress the critics by labeling them enemies of the Nigerian state.
And in this era of fake news, where the campaign is for accuracy, to be hit at all times, and apart from this statement by President Muhammadu Buhari, a national daily just yesterday had to go back to do some fact-checking on some statements by the president from the time he got sworn in. For example, one who said there was nothing in the Foreign Reserve when he got to power. But that paper did an investigation and said that about $2 billion at least in the Foreign Reserve. And there were lists of fact-checking where the president was put on the spot in the report of that national daily. I saw it yesterday that he was wrong, this didn't happen, what he said, wrong. And as a number one citizen of the country, how important, because initially you said that he should have been blamed because he relied on reports on the media, but as a president, you have a team. Are you not supposed to rely on the advice or figures given to you before coming out to speak? How important is that?
No, it's quite very important because the public would expect to hear the facts from the president of the country. And we tend to believe what we are told by our president in Nigeria. And that's not quite unusual. Yes, it is correct. I read the reports also, which is in one of the business newspapers, about all these, highlighting all these contradictions. For me, that is not good enough. That shouldn't have happened, but it has happened. But in between that, you also see what they call Buhari speaks. If you tried to read into it, you will see the Buhari speaks. Yeah, there are some of them. It probably meant they meant a little amount of money in the kitty rather than a huge amount of money.
Is it safe to say
just
that
like
his
in the
statements
power
could amount to figurative or literal?
Precisely.
Meaning?
It's a literal interpretation that I will put to it. It's Buhari speaks. Just like exactly when you talk about the power sector, when he was referring, where's
the power?
Where's the power? It's Buhari speaks. It's his own style of making his own
When it comes
point.
to figures.
When it comes to figures, yeah, it's Buhari's
Well,
place.
what does this reflect really? How does this reflect really on both the Nigerian government as a whole, beyond the man, President Buhari, and of course Nigeria? Because this definitely would have implications when you give, well, not so accurate information coming from the presidency to the public.
Yeah, I would have thought that in any climb, we should have the Minister of Finance giving those information, or the Minister of Information, rather than the President himself, because the President needs to assimilate so many information from different ministries. So whereas this task could have better been done by either the Minister of Works and Power or Minister of Finance, precisely looking at the issues so that to avoid this kind of situation. But it has happened, and it's one of the ways in which regime gets derailed in the country, because you cannot plan on the basis of inaccurate information or
and then again the platform
figures.
that he chose to actually make this statement.
The
You wonder
points,
if there was some kind of strategy in place to start with in terms of how to respond to the Buhari support organization, which was where he made this, very, very weighty statements. That's why we're discussing them now.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate that all these are happening in Nigeria, because you can't imagine a situation where the Controller General of Customs, Ahmed Ali himself, had to lead the Buhari support organization, a serving public official, to the president, where all these statements, were made. That shouldn't have happened in my view, but it has happened. The fact of the matter is we need to move our politics beyond the level where it is currently.
That's it, and that seems to be happening a lot. Even Ibrahim Magu, the EFCC head, at one point on national television was being interviewed in the capacity, of course, of the head of the EFCC, but was wearing a crest depicting Buhari for second term.
Precisely, I saw that.
You saw
too. It's one of the things why people in opposition or those who have committed infractions tend to believe that government is always witch hunting them, because that's the impression we are creating.
And so you want to make public displays of support so
Precisely.
that you can be safe, so that your job is safe.
Precisely, because it's self-serving for those people. They're only thinking about themselves. They are not thinking about the nations. If they're thinking about the country, what about justice? It's not only for justice to be done, justice must have been seen to be done. The moment you start wearing, as the EFCC chief, you are wearing Buhari for second term, you are already creating a very different impression in the minds of those who come in contact with that agency, and the public will tend to see it. So if you are arresting Biodun-Shomi, is because Biodun-Shomi is against Buhari, or you are arresting somebody, is it because it's for Buhari or something? Yeah. So we need not create that situation. This display of psychophancy, we need to stop it. So at the end of the day, it is only we ourselves as a people that can correct some of these things.
All right, Biodun-Shomi, is military camaraderie dead? You have the letter from OBJ, IBB, and T.Y. Danjuma. It all seems to be going somewhere.
Yes, he's not dead. What you see is different people with different interests. You know, the military class, they have their own interest. They are part of the same ruling class. So you have this intra-class struggle, which is currently going on. Intra-ruling class struggle.
In fact, some Nigerians are suspicious that it could even be a ploy. It was 2019.
No, I don't think so. I think genuinely some of them are very aggrieved on one thing or the other. For instance, Danjuma on Taraba.
Yes. Thank you very much, Biodun-Shomi, for your time on the show this morning.